Oh, hello. I'm Jeremy Bloom, co-founder of Marketecture. And has anyone told you how chaotic our industry really is? It is absolute chaos. It's never been harder to predict the future of advertising than now. Cookies are going away. AI is knocking on the door. Regulatory oversight is shifting. Consumers are changing the ways we receive content on an hourly basis. So, let's cover these topics together. We welcome you to join us at our first Marketecture Live conference, where we're bringing together the smartest folks in advertising to talk about the chaotic nature and how to prepare. Join us on March 17th in New York City. Please go to marketecturelive.com and register now.
Welcome to the AdTech God Pod, your window into the world of advertising technology and the people behind it. I'm your host, AdTech God. Welcome to the AdTech God Pod, your go-to for conversations with top product leaders in advertising. On today's episode, we're joined by Mark McEachran, Senior Vice President, Product Management Platform at Yieldmo. Mark's background is impressive, having worked in product for many years, including a resume packed with some of the industry's leading companies like Rakuten, Rubicon Project, and Nexstar. Mark, I'm happy to have you here. Welcome to the AdTech God Pod.
It's been my dream to be on your podcast, so thank you for having me.
I'm glad I can make your dream come true. And thanks for all your engagement online, all the messaging and conversations we've had in the past. So I really appreciate people like you, Mark, who,
I appreciate characters in play in the market. I mean, your moniker, your character has been so much fun. I mean, you and digital advertising are two of my favorites out there.
Yeah, digital advertising is, I guess, a friend, even though I don't know who he is and he doesn't know who I am, but we message each other all the time. Mark, you work in product and you've worked in product for many years. I'd love to hear about how you got into your role today and, what led you to work in advertising tech overall.
Yeah, I don't recall when product became a thing in ad tech. I know I was doing director work. I was directing an engineering team and there was no sort of product role. When I was working at L90 back in like the early 2000s, late 1990s, that was probably my first big role in ad tech, working for Frank Adante, who coincidentally founded Rubicon Project as well. And that's where I got my first real product title. So what was that? 2009. Is that right? Oof.
It's a long time, Mark.
That wasn't even the beginning. It's 2009. And that was a huge move for me. And I'd shake it up. I just sold my business. I moved to LA and sort of met with Frank out on Santa Monica Pier. Kind of got the job over a pitcher of margaritas. Because I went to school with him. He and I went to the same university. I've known him for, since any of my college friends. It's been quite a long time. And sort of they have these through your bell cow, these people in the industry that you kind of, you're affiliated with and you kind of follow them around a lot of times from job to job. Frank's been a bell cow for me. Dr. Neil Richter has been another bell cow. I followed him to Rakuten, for example. I followed Neil over there. And I'm always kind of keeping an eye on where he's going. He's keeping an eye on where I'm going. So you have these people that you vibe with them and you go work with them in the space and you just have a lot of fun building the SSP at Rubicon. I think transformed my career.
Why do you think that is though? Because there's a few people in the industry that I would follow, and there's a few people in the industry that I'm very close friends with. And if they, picked up the phone and called me and said, join, probably join. If I wasn't doing this, but why do you think that is that you find yourself wanting to work with these people so closely again?
It's funny. I've worked with a lot of people. I look at my LinkedIn and it's thousands of connections, and there's probably 25 where I would say, yeah, I'm gonna follow that one around. And they take big swings in a lot of cases. Like Frank took big swings. Neil takes big swings, and I'm like, okay, you're gonna take a big swing. I want to be a part of something big. It reduces the risk of going someplace new. Like, oh, you're gonna take a big swing wherever you go, and that's been a lot of fun. I'm going to go do that with you and have a good time doing it.
You mentioned just a minute ago that you like to go build stuff. And as someone who's kind of building something, right, like a media company with Ari and Jeremy, there is a lot of fun behind it. There's a lot of work, a lot more than I ever thought. But it's also really satisfying to build something out from scratch or from the early days. What about, I guess, the building part keeps you motivated to keep building? Because this is a part of your role, really. Part of your job is to just keep building.
It is the everyday. It's the everyday. And some of it is mundane. Some of it is like, oh, it's to tweak this setting or make a checkbox to do something that's, you used to have to submit a ticket to get done. Some of that, that keeps the wheels on the bus. And then every now and again, you come across something that's like, that could be transformative. It's like hitting that hole in one on the golf course, right? You're like, or that big swing, like 8 out of 10 times I'm slicing or hooking. But like every now and again, I just hit the sweet spot and I'm like, that's why I golf. And that you hit that sweet spot. And that's why I do the job. You drop an idea in front of a team and you say, what about this? And then in a lot of cases, it takes years. But then you get to the end of that and you're like, I remember when that was a conversation at a table with 3 dudes and we built this $10 million, $1 billion, like we're in the billions now, right? You look at the value of these companies, right? They're the billions of dollars. You're like, that was once a conversation around a coffee table or, at a coffee shop with 3 people.
That's like the ultimate like satisfaction of seeing where you've started from and where you end up. I mean, I could imagine, I've never built anything per se, except for this, which really started from a meme account, which is so funny because just did it for fun. But now we're here. You're right. It's like every time I look back at what's been done, I'm like, I can't believe I did that much. It's been a lot of work, a lot of hours, but totally satisfying as a builder.
Yeah, I've followed your career with great enthusiasm.
Yeah, you have. I mean, it's funny. We've interacted a lot and it's pretty crazy. Like keeps adapting, keeps changing. I keep pivoting and seeing what works out there. I've become a lot more like measurement focused in terms of like what I'm doing and how I see, results and what is and what isn't working. But it's really a flywheel now. One product led into another, which led into another. Each one promotes each other. And it's just overall just trying to build a bigger and bigger and bigger following with more and more products. And
I love the flywheel analogy. I look at like building exchanges and SSPs. You're building a marketplace. And once you get buyers and sellers in there and you've created this, you've crafted the thing that draws them in and then the wheel's going. So you've got money, now you've got resources, now you can kind of build on to the next thing. And some companies like the Trade Desk, and they took their flywheel and just...
It's each one feeds the other. And, the more money you generate, the more you can invest, the more product, the more account management, the more biz dev people. You just see this thing grow. It's a fun thing to experience. So you've worked at Rakuten, Rubicon Project. You're now at Yieldmo. Which one of those roles do you feel, it could be where you're at now or in the past, was the most satisfying? Like the one where you look back and you go, holy crap, I can't believe I was a part of that. Pretty awesome.
I would say, bookending the Rubicon Project experience was amazing. It was hard. It was painful at times and brutal at times, but ultimately incredibly satisfying. Built of something that was transformative to that company. It went from an ad network optimization company to a supply side platform company. And, the overnight success, it took 2 or 3 years to actually, eclipse the revenue stream from one to the other. And that was ridiculously satisfying. And now to see where it has gone with that tech, that was amazing. I worked at Rakuten for a bit and I worked at Nexstar for a bit. And those were good jobs, but they weren't that. But I think where I'm at now with Yieldmo, this feels like that back then, where I've got like this, we've had this exchange, we're fixing the things, we're entering a new market, we're building kind of the next level of product offerings that from an exchange or SSP that need to happen, and you're seeing the shift. People are looking to these companies now. Buyers are looking to these companies now more so than they ever have before. Like agencies are working with the exchanges more so than they have before. So the market is definitely in flux from the DSPs, SSPs, and nobody's writing out the buy-side platforms. That's where you manage your campaigns, frequency caps, and all that stuff, right? But the feature set of an exchange is expanding. It's definitely we're pushing the boundaries out of what used to be like, oh, we're just supply curation company. Now we have product offerings for buyers. We have product offerings. We have different integrations with data partners. It's very, very fluid now. And all the market's kind of responding to that too. Like there's lots of like the DSPs are now like kind of operating, they're building direct paths to supply. The boundaries are getting fuzzy, right? The boundaries are definitely getting fuzzy. And you're like, okay, how do we maximize that for today and for the future? And this is like, these are the big problems to solve. And that's exciting. And I'm like, okay. And I've been here 3 years now, a little more than 3 years at Yieldmo. Just like, I see it. I see the sort of the glow and like the people's warm little hearts are like, very excited about the work they're doing. It's really wonderful. I'm having a great time here.
We've seen kind of the buy side and sell side, I guess, borders get a little foggy
for sure,
between the two. Sure. Do you feel that, considering you're an exchange, that this is something that you're going to continue leaning into as a strategy? Do you think, like, my opinions are, like, if you're a supply side platform, you're working primarily with publishers, your key focus is to, optimize yield, generate revenue, try to do the best you can in delivering the best user experience. And then on the other side, on the DSP side, your focus is to complete the campaign, deliver in full, target, and back out some sort of ROI.
Yeah.
It gets foggy with who you prioritize. And I think that's why sometimes I'm a little bit, I wouldn't say against it, but I'm kind of like, okay, who are you focusing on? The publisher? Are you focusing on the advertiser's KPIs? I think that's why I'm a little bit of a standoffish when it comes to it.
Yeah. The seeds for what's happening now were planted when header bidding came about. And before header bidding, you definitely had the bifurcation between buy side and sell side platform, because each SSP effectively had exclusive access to that subset of inventory. They could service that publisher exclusively. They didn't have to worry about trying to draw buyers to the inventory because there was a competitive operation out there in the same space that offered the same inventory. Now with header bidding, everybody, like, you can have 5 or 6 partners on the supply side that have the access to the same inventory. So exchanges and SSPs have to now kind of go to buyers and say, it's more attractive to buy through our pipes. Like, how do I draw that in? I need to craft product offerings to draw that in, to draw those monies through our pipes versus one of the other exchanges, right? That's ultimately why we're in this space we are now. I can't go back in time. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. And I think what's interesting is that it is pushing everyone to innovate where they might have sat on their laurels before. Like, if we left it as is, I think the market would be a little less interesting. You'd have buyer side platforms and sell side platforms. You'd have the healthy tension of, maximizing yield versus maximizing reach and efficiency, right? And that's still a healthy tension, but now it's almost a healthy tension within each company, right? So we at Yieldmo, like, we're looking at this, like, what's reasonable margin to take for the services we're offering. And that's a conversation we have inside. And we have representatives from both sides, and there is tension there. And I think that's healthy, because it will ultimately lead to more efficient markets on both sides.
Yeah. And I think the transparency with both teams is very different when you're in one company too. There's a lot of questions when you work at an SSP, how many fees the buy side is taking, or how much fees the supply side is taking, because none of it's transparent. Nobody knows, right? A trade desk doesn't know what percentage an SSP like Magnite or an SSP like Freewheel would take.
Right. It used to be a little more transparent. Like, publishers used to have agreements with the SSP's fixed margin, and it was all in the bill. And that was, a lot of it was second price auction based. So, like, everybody played reasonably fair. But then once everybody switched to first price auction, you got to shave off your margin in the stream.
What do you think is the most challenging for you, though, on the product side? Yieldmo is obviously innovating and building. I saw you guys won some award for AI in 2022 or 2021, before AI was cool and everybody's sales pitch. Now it's in everybody's sales pitch on everybody's website. What do you think is the biggest challenge for you, having to innovate and scale with so much competition in the market, and so many changes kind of coming here and there?
Yieldmo has, I guess, somewhat of a unique data set, and I don't want to go too much into the weeds on that. There's some interesting secret sauce within our walls that is a little bit unique in the market. And we're now really leaning into some of that stuff and building product on top of it, which is great. And it's product that's now really resonating with the market. So I think from a challenges perspective, I feel good about, like, our premium offerings. I feel good about what we're going to market with in front of buyers and sellers. We've got some strong offerings on both sides. In my role, I focus on a lot of, like, identity and privacy and things like that. And, like, it's been a swirl. It's been a lot of, there's all the, like, there's new laws coming on the books, right? There's new laws in the States, which is a big mess in the US. There's challenges to laws in Europe, which is now refining the scope of GDPR, which is all good. That's one of the better things coming out, is, like, we're getting narrower in terms of, like, how fuzzy the edges are of that law. I think that's good to get that clarity. And appreciate all those companies that are taking to task in GDPR land, because they're really helping out the industry, and appreciate all those folks just clarifying that stuff. For me, that's the hard part of like anticipating and being ready for what comes next, and hedging the bets on the infrastructure to make sure that Yieldmo's platform will weather whatever happens, when the cookie goes away, or when legislation hits some particular privacy related thing.
Right. I would imagine, because that's actually one of my questions later on, where I ask you, working in product, like how challenging is privacy? Because the regulation is changing, and it's vague because a lot of these policies aren't necessarily written by people that work in AdTech.
Yeah.
So then we have to figure out and decipher what they're saying and try to apply that to our products so we comply. Yes, there's compliance companies out there that help you do this or integrate with your products, but it's tough. Privacy is probably one of the biggest topics I hear in the market, along with identity, that I feel like is probably a huge challenge for product people.
Yeah, there's regulation, right? There's GDPR, there's the US consent efforts state by state. There's even higher level stuff going on that can impact the advertising ecosystem. And then there's also like what the platforms are doing. They're competing on a privacy front to their customer. And it's very different than regulation. So you can't just focus on one versus the other. Yes, lots of legal stuff. Avoid litigation, rule number one. But then also like what are the platforms doing, and how are they evolving?
From where you sit on the product side, where do you feel the most growth is going to happen next, 12, 18 months? I'd love to hear that. I'd love to hear your opinion on where you think where all the growth is coming from as an industry, not necessarily Yieldmo, but as an industry overall.
I think there's big opportunities now in anything cross media. And I've sort of been waiting for this moment in time. You had the web, and it came online, and it was all digital advertising. And then you had the mobile apps, and then suddenly SDK showed up, and those became digital advertising. And then you had streaming radio, right? Spotify's and whatnots. And now all of radio has a digital advertising component, and you're getting adoption, right? Users are streaming more than they're listening to terrestrial, kind of a thing. And now streaming television, right? CTV. Again, we're seeing digital advertising now taking over, which, traditional advertising, I've visited companies where we're like, do we want to try and put programmatic into the cable box? And absolutely not. No, we do not. But now my cable box is not a cable box anymore. It's a Android device that streams. The cable box I have in my house is another streaming device. It's like a Fire Stick. And then you have out of home, traditional print type on banners, and now that's becoming digital. So all of these things you can now operate programmatically. And there's opportunity there to, bring all that into a buy-side platform, bring all that into a sell-side platform. Now you've got every piece of media you could ever want. You can balance your campaign spend across all of them from one or two or three different platforms. Like that's what I've been waiting for. And here we are, finally, right? We're now where I wanted to be 10 years ago. I think that's going to be very interesting. The other thing that's coming, this is mostly driven by CTV, but partially by out of home and maybe a little bit by radio. We've made massive investments over the last 20 years in doing one-to-one marketing. My one ad curated for one individual user on their personal device. And I feel like even with the threats to identity, we're well established. That stuff works really well. Even with the threats to identity, we can still do a pretty good job there. We've got alternative IDs and so on and so forth. You can still generally reach the person you're trying to reach with your marketing message, regulation and platforming notwithstanding. So we're going to go back to the household. And I think a lot of these digital platforms, like in the ad tech space, are going to retool to now come and build up like, okay, we got the individual, we've got that lockdown. Now we're going to rebuild and train the marketer, the digital traders to operate at the household level, because now we've got CTV and now we've got individuals with their personal devices feeding the learning machine that then feeds the CTV ads. I think that is the other thing that's going to start happening. We're going to have household targeting is going to be probably big in the next 12 months.
That's actually great feedback. And that was a great answer. With the household and household targeting and really changing the mindset of marketers, a lot of times innovation starts and then the actual rollout and implementation of new ways to buy takes time. this happens always in whatever product you roll out that's innovative and new. It's, check out this new tool, check out this new product, and then there's some lag time behind it. Do you think with the need to adjust the way marketers buy and the requirements done in regulation or in the market, do you think that adoption will happen a lot faster than maybe without regulation? Because we have a whole government change happening, right? We have lots of changes happening. And I'm wondering, does that play a role in what type of laws roll out in the next 3, 4, 5 months? Or are these, regulatory bodies going to continue as is to continue to do what they're doing without much change? And I think that's where I'm a little bit confused as to what could happen in the next 6 months.
I feel like government is slow. Laws are slow. And I've seen this, GDPR, it's just barely now getting into CTD. I think we should be more looking at, as an industry, as individuals, as companies, given what is the law on the web. You need consent or you need opt-out capabilities on the web. Let's see if we can insert the same frameworks into the new media types. Can we craft CTV apps with the capabilities to opt out of advertising? And Apple's done it, right? Ask App not to track. They've done it. It's on my Apple TV. That stuff, I think there's some forward-looking kind of thing there. It says, and Apple oversteps, right? They go beyond what the law requires of them. But at least, if you're a Roku out there, or if you're a Trade Desk with their new streaming operating system, build it in. Have some forethought. Even though there's no laws around it, there's precedent. You can point over here and say, well, it's going to be similar to this, so let's make sure to adhere to that. I think if you build in that direction, I don't think the government's going to come in and close the door on a now $1 trillion industry.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I've just always wondered with a new change happening, how that'll impact the industry. And I don't lose sleep over it or anything. But I just, I'm curious, what happens if FTC changes, if state or federal laws change, remember, in the end, this is a 4-year cycle that we go through, and lots of changes happen, but they don't necessarily get implemented either. So it could be hey, we're going to do this, and 4 years later, everybody changes to say, let's scratch that off the list. We don't want to do it anymore. And then they're back at it another 4 years after that, trying to pick back up. We
all weathered GDPR. There's enough people in the space that have been okay, we made it through that. I think we'll be all right.
If there was one thing in the industry that you could change, what would that be, Mark?
Oh, boy. I don't want to belabor the point. I wouldn't have killed off the cookie.
The cookie.
I really like the cookie.
I mean, the cookie was just easy.
It had a good run, man. 30 years.
It had a long run.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any recent research on it and how things are going to change, with the new, I guess, is it the opt-in messaging that's going to be in Chrome?
Yeah, I think they had a meeting a bit ago. They're crafting the verbiage, and we'll see what it looks like, presumably sometime in 2025.
Yeah, I think it'll accelerate. I think the verbiage will be very much so opt-out.
Hopefully they use a dark pattern.
Yeah. I'm hoping everybody's ready. It seems like there's a lot of solutions out there that are prepared now. I think it's one thing working with a small subset of clients and working with the entire open internet, but we'll see how everybody adjusts and grows from there. All right. Well, Mark, that actually that brings us to the end of the conversation. So I really want to thank you, and thank you to Yieldmo for having you here. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the AdTech God Pod, a podcast for the people, about the people. Stay connected with me for more insights, trends, and interviews in the realm of AdTech. Don't miss out on the latest updates, so follow me on X, Instagram, and connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't forget, ATG Slack community has insights, networking opportunities, and jobs. Keep the conversation going and stay at the forefront of AdTech innovation.